Let's start off with Chris Paul because this happened in the middle of the night. Woke up hearing that Chris Paul got sent home by the Los Angeles Clippers. We've gotten some news since then with what happened here. I know you covered this in detail on The Big Number on Wednesday, your podcast. Ty Lue, not on speaking terms for weeks with Chris Paul. Shams said that Chris Paul was vocal with management, with coaches, with players, very critical of them. And The Athletic had a story that posted last night, and they updated this morning that there was a request for Chris Paul to stop with the, quote, locker room lawyering. So this situation, we're learning more details. I'm sure more will come out, but my initial reaction, Tom, it was just utter shock. The timing of it, middle of the night on a road trip during your retirement tour, days after posting this whole video and photo and all that about how nice it is to have CP3 back with the Clippers. It's just shocking. But then again, this is the team that traded Blake Griffin 6 months after giving him a whole ceremony that he was going to be a Clipper for life. So maybe I shouldn't be too shocked.
Yeah, and now that we see the Chris Paul FaceTime with DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin, it seems like they are laughing at the Clippers, like laughing at this whole organization, the way that they've handled this, and the way they've handled that Lob City crew. I mean, I noted about it in yesterday's show, but none of those guys are remaining with the organization. They don't have any jerseys hanging in the rafters. This is as soulless of an organization as you'll find. They don't have any history. They've never been to the NBA Finals, and they've ostracized some of the key members of the golden years of this team. And so now you're looking at Chris Paul, who's now without, a team. He's been sent home back to LA in the middle of this road trip, and it screams to me what an absolute failure of leadership from Steve Ballmer, Lawrence Frank on down. The fact that you were able to bring in Chris Paul this summer and hold a media press conference saying, oh, it's a natural fit. We talked about it with his agent. We talked about it with Ty Lue. We were very, very clear about the role that Chris Paul was going to have here. And we all just feel great about it. I talked to James Harden, Lawrence Frank saying, we brought in James Harden because they used to play together in Houston. And this is something that he signed off on too, just the leadership qualities that he brings in. And no one could keep this from fraying before Christmas, which is it's such a bad look for the entire franchise that they all thought this was a good idea. The oldest team in the NBA and a team that with Kawhi Leonard being a quote unquote leader, they thought that this was going to work out. And so Chris Paul was Chris Paul. We know that Chris Paul, this is his personality. He played under Ty Lue when he was an assistant, played against Ty Lue, of course, in the playoffs with Phoenix. Lawrence Frank has been with Chris Paul. They all know the Chris Paul experience. And for them to all just think that this was going to be fine is just, I think, just a failure of leadership, Kev.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely a failure of leadership for sure. And I think, what they say publicly is one thing. I've heard from multiple sources that James Harden was opposed to the Chris Paul signing, that he was one of the guys that was like, I'm not so sure here. And then this ended up happening, and the criticism constantly with players, with coaches, with front office management. It seems like maybe a little less surprising to James Harden considering their time together. But ultimately in this situation, for it to reach this point, Tom, with Ty Lue and CP3 reportedly not speaking for multiple weeks, I mean, as bad as the Clippers are, and you covered how they're the most underachieving team of what, the last, how many years? How many did you outline? Yeah. 5+ years, the most underachieving team. Maybe he was right. Yeah. Some of the things he was saying. Maybe Chris Paul was right. Maybe they should have fired Ty Lue and made Chris Paul the first player coach in many decades. Maybe that's what should have happened.
Right. Like they were 5-16. I mean, The writing is on the wall. Like something has to change. And he might have been right the whole time about what the lack of communication, the lack of leadership, the X's and O's, whatever it was. Clearly something was very deeply wrong with this team. And I don't know if you've been in a fight with a significant other or an argument and you're like, yeah, your snoring definitely didn't wake me up 6 times overnight. Like, I'm definitely not blaming you for me being in a bad mood because you were, up all night just snoring. It definitely wasn't the snoring. I promise you. Obviously, the way that Lawrence Frank has been talking about, like, look, I'm not blaming Chris Paul for our 5-16 start. I'm not doing it. I'm absolutely not blaming him. Not going to blame him. It seems like he doth protest too much in this situation. And then you look and they do win on Wednesday night without Chris Paul. So
no Jalen Johnson for the Hawks. I mean, they were depleted.
no
I'm
Jalen
not.
Johnson, no
I mean, I'm
Kristaps
not.
Porzingis, no
Yes,
Trae Young. I'm with you.
I'm not reading into that win for the Clippers at all. I mean, look, I know it's nice to get a win, but that Hawks team had nothing on Wednesday night. None of their key guys at all. So like, I don't read into that. If the Clippers start rattling off some wins, like if they face Memphis on Friday, Minnesota on Saturday, and like if they win these games, Tom, like okay, then maybe we can talk. But that Atlanta win, I'm not reading into that. Ultimately, like I think you're right. For Chris Paul, Lawrence Frank is right. You can't blame CP3. He's playing 14 minutes per game, even though he's really struggling in those minutes. One of the other things I did hear, Tom, is that Chris Paul expected to get more minutes. I don't think there was any expectation that he would start or play 30 minutes a game. I think they definitely did subdue expectations there, but I think he expected to play more than 14 minutes. And so for CP3, a guy that started for the far majority of his career. He had some ups and downs his year with the Warriors where he did come off the bench. He was great last year. He played all 82 games with the Spurs last year, right? I mean, like he had a pretty solid year for a guy at 39 years old, now 40 years old. This decline feels to me like maybe one of the things, and I don't know this for certain, one of the things he might have been really annoyed with here is the fact that he's not able to get into a rhythm playing only 14 minutes per game, playing in the rotations that in the way that he was. Maybe that's something he felt like he could contribute more. So that's my understanding, is that he thought he'd play more. At this point, it's, easy to say, why would you do that when he's struggling? But maybe he would have performed more like he did last year with more minutes.
Well, and considering that Bradley Beal's out for the season, they need extra ball handlers. And the whole point of bringing Chris Paul in, and Lawrence Frank talked about this in the media press conference when they signed him this summer, was we can't have James Harden doing everything for this team. We need a guy like Chris Paul to shoulder some of the load. And he started 82 games last year. So this is a guy who clearly could handle the workload required to play 20, 25 minutes a game, even at this age, because he did it last year for all 82 games as the starter for the San Antonio Spurs. And so clearly there was a misalignment between Ty Lue, James Harden, and Chris Paul. The fact that Chris was not playing much this year when they desperately needed a guy to relieve James Harden of all of that burden offensively in the creation. Chris Dunn isn't that guy. Bradley Beal was supposed to be that guy. Kawhi Leonard's been out for half the season. So I get it. If you're Chris Paul and you're like, this is why you brought me in. Like, I'm the backup point guard for James Harden, and I'm willing to take a back seat, but I'm not willing to just sit every night for most of the game. So this is a situation that I think was, if you're a leader, if you're Lawrence Frank, and you're looking at all of the personalities involved here, and it devolved to such an extent that you had to like schedule a meeting with your player 2 days in advance and fly across the country. And then all of this blows up and he gets waived or sent home at 3 a.m. It's poor leadership. And the fact that they didn't see this coming and that they weren't able to manage this situation from the get-go, it seems to me that like either Ty Lue is not holding James Harden accountable or James Harden is not holding everybody else accountable. And remember what Greg Popovich said. And I know this clip has been flying around the social media recently, is Greg Popovich knew that Kawhi Leonard was not a classic leader. He was not a vocal leader. And so this entire locker room seems like they were needing a leader. And Chris Paul felt like, look, if no one else is going to step up here and hold people accountable, then I'm going to have to do it myself. And I mentioned this earlier this week, is like Udonis Haslem could do that because he'd been with the organization continuously since he was drafted. There's no one like that with the Clippers. And so I understand if Chris Paul was like, no one's doing this, so I might as well do it because no one else is that guy in the locker room.
I mean, look, this team remains a disaster. We've covered all their struggles on the floor, off the floor, the entire season so far. Still 6-16, seventh worst record in the NBA right now. Still a 34.5% chance the Oklahoma City Thunder get a top 4 pick, an 8.2% chance they get the number 1 pick. Still an absolute disaster, even more of a disaster at this point. I said a few weeks ago when I had Justin Termini on the podcast, we talked about how it could get worse than it was at that time. Well, this is one of those steps for the season getting worse for the Los Angeles Clippers. And at this point, I mean, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. Maybe it was so bad that they end up starting rattling off some wins. I'm very, very doubtful. Strong probability they split these next two or lose both of them, especially that game against Minnesota. Ultimately, with Chris Paul, Tom, like I can't fathom this is how it ends for a Hall of Famer like Chris Paul. I know he wanted the retirement tour in LA, the place where he had the highest highs of his career aside from making the finals with the Phoenix Suns that one year. But ultimately, look, he still showed last year he can still offer something positive to a team. And so I'd imagine there will be other teams out there who are like, oh, we'll bring him in and hopefully he can do what he did for San Antonio just, 8 months ago when he finished playing 82 games at age 39. Do you think there's a team that should be calling up, the Clippers for a trade right now or trying to get him through waivers? Who should be the number one team that goes after Chris Paul?
The one that makes the most sense is the Lakers because it is in LA and because he has so many personal relationships with LeBron and JJ Redick. And he was on that Phoenix Suns team with DeAndre Ayton. And of course, like there's a lot of history there. That seems like to me the most likely scenario because it keeps him home in LA and he can reunite with a lot of his familiar faces and close circle with the Lakers. They don't have a 15th roster spot available until January 19th. And so for him, he might have to just sit at home and wait for the Lakers to be able to add him to that 15th slot. Whether they would want that, I don't know. Like the personality of Chris Paul right now was too much for the Los Angeles Clippers to stomach. Would LeBron James and JJ Redick, who had played many years and was close with Chris Paul, he knows firsthand the personality, what it's like to have Chris Paul in the locker room. LeBron does not yet, of course. And so the question is whether they would be willing to do that for Chris Paul. And it would be kind of a redemption tour for Chris. Obviously, the Clippers wanted nothing to do with him, waiving him and sending him home. I should not say waving him, send him packing in the middle of the night, in the middle of the season on a road trip. Obviously, Chris is going to have a huge chip on his shoulder to prove them wrong. And what better way to do it than with the Los Angeles Lakers, who, by the way, are playing at Intuit Dome on January 22nd on Amazon Prime, where Blake Griffin is going to be calling that game.
Oh.
So, Kev, my third eye is wide open on this one. That would be an amazing story if Chris Paul, the day that he's available to sign with the Lakers, and then the first game back is at Intuit Dome, and he just, does in the very Chris Paul way, passive aggressive, I'm sure, is just waving at all his old friends over there on the Clippers. So I think the Lakers, both story-wise and just how much drama that would be, and the fact that, that they're trying to win a championship too. They check off a lot of boxes for Chris.
That timing. I mean, what a job by the schedulers. How could they possibly have known? It's as if it was all scripted. That's
it would
crazy.
be nuts, dude. It would be nuts. Do you think the Lakers would want to bring someone like Chris Paul in, or do you think they want to, just, hey, things are going well here. We've got enough ball handlers here. We don't need to bring in Chris Paul. We love you, buddy, but
I mean, do they need him, Tom? Probably not. Should they bring him in? Why not? Right? I mean, having another ball handler, LeBron's buddy, a backup for Luka handling the ball. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to bring.
It's the 15th slot, so you're not really bringing someone in to like change the team, really. So I mean, outside of that, it's tough to check all the boxes of what Chris wants and what the team would want,
Well, and that's the thing. Like Chris Paul, I looked up a quote he had to Pat McAfee during the offseason, and and he said how he's been on the road in San Antonio and Golden State and Phoenix and all that, and he said, I want to be a dad. My son's 16, my daughter's 12. I want to play, but I also want to be a dad. And so I think that's in part why he chose the Clippers over some of the other teams that made inquiries about him. And so I think with CP3, maybe, it's the Lakers or nobody. Maybe that's a possibility. But at the same time, I think there's other teams that could offer him better opportunity, like the Minnesota Timberwolves. I continue to hear they would have interest in Ja Morant if he were to become available. But Chris Paul, if you get him for cheap and have obviously you already have old Mike Conley, but adding old Chris Paul, it's a different flavor. It's more playmaking, whereas Conley's still just more of a shooter rather than a creator. And so, maybe Minnesota, but does he want to move again? The final year of his career? Maybe not. That's going to depend on his priorities. Like you said, what the team wants and what Chris Paul wants, and only
Can
time will
we
tell there.
can we just entertain the idea that he goes to OKC? OKC
Oh,
has the Clippers
just
pick.
ride the bench and
Just
win it,
hey,
win the
attach
title
one of
there.
your
Oh
maybe
my!
one of your swaps that you have going forward, and
Oh,
we'll
they,
take
they're
Chris
not
Paul
giving
off
that
your.
up. They're,
You
they're
know,
not.
you want
No,
to get rid
they're
of
giving
Chris
up any
Paul, but you
first. Give a second round pick and that's it. He's 40 years old, Tom.
I know, I know. I'm trying to think of what would be the most dramatic storyline is Chris Paul
Oh,
winning the title in OKC, finally getting his championship, and then the Clippers hand over their first round pick to Chris Paul's
insane,
team. I
insane.
mean, you try to think of all the teams that know what they're getting in Chris Paul, like the personality wise. That's why I mentioned the Lakers, but the Thunder with SGA in the year in the bubble where they were able to well overachieve that season. It would seem to me that a team like that might think about it, at least have a consideration, but they have
I
15
wouldn't.
slots already
I
filled.
wouldn't
I
do
don't
it.
think that
I
they're
would.
going to
I,
do
I
it.
wouldn't do it. I would not change the energy in that room with Chris Paul. It's too much of a change. He made sense at that time for that young, up and coming OKC team. He makes no sense for this current OKC team, in my opinion. I would not go for him. Before we get to Giannis, I want to talk about the game that you broadcasted on Wednesday night, and that was the Cavaliers Blazers, because the Cavaliers lost again, Tom. They've lost 4 of their last 5 games. They've lost 7 of their last 13 games playing below 500 basketball. Darius Garland has not been good. No Max Strus. Lonzo Ball looks terrible. Dean Wade's really struggling. They were number 1 in the NBA last year, or number 2 in the NBA last year in 3-point percentage. This year, they're number 1 in the NBA in 3-point attempts, but 22nd in the NBA in 3-point percentage. What's wrong with the Cavaliers? What did you see last night with this team, Tom? Why is it not working this year with the Cavs?
The body language from Darius Garland, Kevin Calabro, our play-by-play guy, noted it from the get-go. Was he just didn't seem like he was happy out there. He just seemed like he didn't have the energy, was upset. And at the end of the game, I remember seeing Darius Garland hand on his knees, shaking his head after the game, 2 of 13 shooting from the floor and just getting roasted defensively time and time out. This is kind of worst case scenario for the Clippers right now, Kev, because Darius Garland is playing through a toe injury that is bothering him to an extent that he was already being targeted defensively in the playoffs and throughout his career. And now if he can't provide any offense to offset the defensive liabilities, then Darius Garland is not just an average player. He's a liability now. And so for the Cavs, if you look at their on-court, off-court ratings defensively, their defensive rating balloons to 120 points every 100 possessions when Darius Garland is out there. And by the way, they have the defensive player of the year on their team. So it is a problem if Darius Garland is not able to offset and compensate for his defensive deficiencies by having awesome scoring, 25 points a night, amazing scorer, and being able to distribute. Then you can't have Darius Garland, a limited Darius Garland, who's been dealing with this toe issue, off-season surgery, and missing games this season because it hasn't gotten right. This is a huge problem for the Cavs because they can't win in the postseason with both undersized guards, especially, Kev, if Darius Garland's wheels are not right.
Yeah, and I think that's spot on, Tom. Garland is nowhere near the all-star caliber player we've seen in past years. I mean, his numbers are down across the board, at the rim, from floater range in the paint, 24% this year. From mid-range, he's down. From three-point range, he's down. Defensively, as you said, he's even worse at this point. I do wonder how much that toe injury could be bothering him, but at the same time, he wasn't near his peak last year. It feels like some players are able to play through nagging injuries and maintain an elite level of play. Darius Garland, anytime he deals with something, the weird jaw injury he had before, whatever it is, it seems like it just completely derails his ability on the floor. And so if you have Darius Garland having those issues, and then you have 2 guys in the front court, I mean, Jared Allen is a very good basketball player sometimes, and then other times he looks like a complete liability out there getting overpowered inside the basket. This year, he's shooting only 57% from the field. He's a guy that you expect at his size to be shooting 70+%, finishing everything around the basket. Sometimes there's some softness to Jared Allen offensively and defensively and on the boards. And then with Evan Mobley, the expectation this year, Tom, was that you have this defensive player of the year. This is the year he's going to take a big leap offensively. It has not happened. Evan Mobley is still just a very good offensive player. He can bang threes, play make a little bit as a near 7-footer, but he's not a high volume guy. And that's one of the things they definitely need. If Garland isn't providing that next to Donovan Mitchell, who's been great individually this season, it has to be Evan Mobley. And Mobley hasn't shown in now year 5 for him that he can elevate his play to that level over a consistent basis. We've seen it through really short spurts, but not over a long duration of the season. And that's where you look at Cleveland. The ball's not moving as much anymore either. I mean, they played with so much. Was there a team in the NBA last year, Tom, that played with more motion and movement and had more layers to their offense over the course of the full regular season? It was beautiful to watch the Cavaliers this year. It just feels so stagnant this year. It just feels dead to me. And that's where, I don't know, is this just do you have any feeling that this could just be an early season, blip? Last year, the Pacers weren't good entering the NBA Cup. They go to the NBA Finals. Could it be just that for the Cavaliers? Or do you think that something fundamentally changed with Cleveland this year that kind of removes them from that East favorite category?
I would say that there's a chance of that happening, that they just get it right halfway through the season and turn it on. But we've seen them collapse in the postseason how many years now? That, yeah, they can be a good regular season team, but have we had any faith that Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland and this roster can overachieve come playoff time? I don't think so, especially with Darius Garland not being right. This might be a lost season for him if he's not able to get his toe injuries, which, by the way, these things linger. If you're dealing with in the middle of the season, it might take weeks for him to get right when he's dealing with something like this. And I just don't have faith that he can suddenly grow a foot taller and become a better defender. So my feeling on the Cavs is this is not a emergency, 5-alarm fire for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But if I'm a Cavs fan, I'm feeling very nervous about their future, especially when this was supposed to be their season. The Eastern powers have fallen. And you're looking at a Eastern Conference that was there for the taking. And Evan Mobley, like you said, it reminds me of Bam Adebayo, where it was Miami was just desperate for him to take over and become a 25-point guy and to be a lot more assertive offensively. And Evan Mobley is in that same boat that Bam Adebayo was previously, where it's just maybe he's not that guy offensively and he has to do so much defensively that it's just some guys just don't have that in them. And so I have real questions about the Cavs. If there was any year, Kev, for the Cavs to take over the East, this would have been it. And instead, they're in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, middle of the pack, and not a lot of reasons for optimism yet. We'll see if that changes at some point over the course of the year. All right, Tom, let's talk about Giannis. It's time to talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo, our main topic today, because on Wednesday, Shams Charania reported that Giannis and his agent planned on meeting with the Milwaukee Bucks to discuss whether his best fit is staying or playing elsewhere. And Shams said that a resolution is expected in the coming weeks. And the Bucks, of course, are off to a pretty crappy start this season compared to expectations. They got a surprising win last night. They're 10-13 on the year. Surprising last night, in part because 3 minutes into the game, Giannis went out. Giannis suffered a right calf strain after a odd step, apparently, and pulled himself out of the game. And they managed to pull out the win, but Giannis is out now, Tom, for who knows how long. I'm sure until he gets traded or he decides he wants to stay, then he'll make his return. But
super bizarre.
Super
that highlight,
bizarre injury, right?
I've watched it so many times. I can't explain what happened there. At first I was worried about the Achilles, just because he looked back, in that classic "who kicked me" that we see all the time with Achilles tears. And he's just jogging. And it seemed like his whole leg gave out, and then he's expressing concern immediately, calling to the bench. Kev, I'm very confused by this injury. I'm no doctor, but usually when we hear something like this with a player of this magnitude, we found out pretty quickly what the diagnosis is or what the concern is. It just after he's missed some time this season and then having this issue after the trade, controversy, I can't imagine, like you said, that he comes back until he finds a resolution about where he's going to be going forward. And I don't think it's Milwaukee.
Tom, I think he faked it. That was my first thought. I was like, there's no way this is a real injury. 3 minutes into the game, it looks like a bad acting job to me. That was my first thought. But then, people did remind that a few years ago in the playoffs against Boston, he took a very similar step and did suffer an actual injury that knocked him out for the remainder of the playoffs. And this is the video, if you're watching on YouTube here, with just a normal step. And he suffered a calf strain, reacted pretty much identical to the way he did last night. And so maybe it is a real injury and he does feel something in his calf. But the timing of it, 3 minutes into the game on the day of all those reports, it's very suspicious. It's very suspect. Dr. Brian Suterer, who runs a excellent YouTube channel, the best, breaking down injuries across sports. He also did a breakdown video looking at this, and he's like, I'm not seeing much. the team doctors and the training staff on the bench also really didn't seem too much concerned, he pointed out. And, it's all very strange. But what we do know for sure, Tom, with Giannis, is that he's in a situation here where he's in limbo. We do know, according to Brian Windhorst and Shams Charania, that he did ask for the Knicks this offseason. The Bucks inquired with the Knicks, and there was nothing there. There's no trade to be made between the Bucks and the Knicks. So we do know he's at least had a wandering eye. And now we're at the point where Shams Charania said that, to his understanding, it's going to go well beyond just the Knicks. That's what Sham said. It's going to go well beyond just the Knicks for the teams that Giannis Antetokounmpo will look for this season if he does indeed ask to move on from the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's what we know for sure. And I think, Tom, with Giannis in this situation and with the Bucks specifically, I had a call yesterday and a few text conversations about this whole situation. And one of the questions that's been on my mind is, will the Bucks send Giannis where he wants to go, or will they send him to the highest bidder? And those two could connect. The highest bidder could be where he wants to go, or one of the places he wants to go, but it could also be a place that he doesn't want to go, like Kawhi to the Raptors, like Paul George to Oklahoma City. We've seen this story play out before. The player empowerment era, has been a thing where players get what they want, but we've also seen players not get what they want. We've seen that too over the last decade with trade demands. And one of the things that keeps getting brought up to me, Tom, I'm curious if you've heard anything here or your general thoughts, is when Giannis signed his last contract, at that time, could there have been a handshake agreement that if we end up breaking up, we will send you where you want? Because at that time, when he signed the last extension, there was the will he stay or won't he stay conversation at that time as well. And so everything has seemingly been pretty open between the Bucks side and the Giannis side of this whole operation here. And so I do wonder if maybe that is part of the agreement here. We already do have a little bit of evidence with the Knicks conversations from this summer. They were at least willing to entertain those conversations for Giannis. And so that is one of the paths here, is that the Bucks don't get the best overall return for the future, but they get a solid return, you'd hope, and that Giannis gets exactly what he wants. So I do wonder if that could be something that did end up happening during those last extensions talks.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it that like the Bucks reached out to the Knicks and was like, "Hey, give us your best offer if you want to get Giannis. Like, give us your best offer." Because it seems weird that they would reach out to the Knicks on that level, and I might have that wrong, but the way that this soft launch trade demand has been going on for what seems like years now, it's so just it's aggravating as someone who covers the league. Like, just go out and say I want to be traded, because this whole like, I'm meeting with the organization through my agent to talk about my future plans, and the whole May flirtatious courtship with the New York Knicks, and not how complicated that the verbiage was around that. I think what we do know is that on October 1st, if he can get his extension done, he has to have 6 months up until October 1st with his team in order to be eligible for the max extension there. according to Bobby Marks reporting, like that is a big variable here from what I can tell, is that would mean that he would need to be traded not next summer, but by the deadline, by the trade deadline. So that's why I think these meetings are happening is like, hey, man, I want to maximize my money here. And you, if you're going to move me, I would prefer if you did it now sooner than later, because look, if you want to do right by me, that would be great. But also these other teams want to be able to give me that max extension, have that offer on the table, in due time. But that trade has to happen by the trade deadline. And so that's why we're sitting here in early December, a couple months before the trade deadline. I think Giannis is having a sense of urgency. And so who on the other end of that deal is going to have a similar sense of urgency of trying to get a deal done by the trade deadline with Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks? Well, the Knicks certainly, but the problem with the Knicks and the problem with other organizations that are pick empty, like they are pick poor. What do the Knicks have that the Milwaukee Bucks would want, which makes things, we have to break this out into, 3-team, 4-team trades. And that's why I think this trade hasn't already gone down, is because the Knicks don't have any of the assets that I think the Milwaukee Bucks would want.
Well, let's look at the Knicks' best possible offer with one of the many fake trades we will discuss on this podcast here. So with the Knicks, Tom, I think the best they could probably do is Karl-Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby. They have 2 pick swaps and 7 second-round draft picks. They don't have any outright first-round draft picks they can deal. They could get back Giannis and Kyle Kuzma in a deal like that. Obviously, the Bucks, they don't have their own first, so there is a possibility here. Think about when the Spurs traded Kawhi Leonard. At the time, the Celtics offered Jaylen Brown. They didn't want Jaylen Brown. They ended up taking the more proven commodity with the DeMar DeRozan package from the Toronto Raptors. It's very possible that the Bucks say, we don't want unproven assets. We don't want the picks-heavy package with nothing else. We want proven guys to have a competitive, solid team. We want Cat. We want OG Anunoby. We want to build out a team this way that's scrappy, that can space the floor with Turner and with Towns. Who knows? They could prefer a package like this. But ultimately, like you said, Tom, that deal would have happened by now if both sides wanted it, if this were indeed on the table. Both sides would want this. If it would have done it if it were on the table already. So I don't think that this is what the Bucks would want, which is why it gets back to my question here of like, will they appease Giannis's wishes and send him to a team that he wants to go to? Will they send him to the highest bidder, which could also be a team on his list? That could be the case. Or are they going to send him wherever they want, and it might be a team that's not on their list? And I want to go through each of these 3 paths with some fake trades here to kind of, get a feel for what could be out there for the Bucks. What teams in theory could be on Giannis's list? I want to start out with the Warriors, Tom. Because I feel like Golden State, the Steph Giannis relationship over the years could be something there. Maybe it's a fake trade where the Warriors give up Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and then they have a collection of picks they could give up: a 2026 first, 27 swap, 28 first, 29 swap, 2031 swap, 2032 first, get back Giannis, Kyle Kuzma, and Thanasis Antetokounmpo. He's in every single one of these deals, by the way, that we're going to talk about today. Giannis's brother. I think the Warriors would drive Jimmy Butler to the airport. I think they would drive Draymond to the airport to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. You could put together a bunch of different combinations that would work with the Warriors, but their picks package isn't great. Like, this wouldn't be the best offer. This would be appeasing Giannis and giving him what he wants.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting formation. I would break it out into three teams, and I would say Warriors get Giannis. Jimmy Butler goes actually routed over to Phoenix, where they've been talking to each other. Last year, we talked so much about Jimmy Butler and the Phoenix Suns, but of course, the Dillon Brooks remaking the whole organization, the culture in that locker room. I don't think that they would move Dillon Brooks over in a trade. But I do think Jalen Green and Grayson Allen moving up to Milwaukee, and you put the picks in from the Golden State Warriors side. The pick package that you just put in, I think, goes to Milwaukee in this package. I don't think Jalen Green and Grayson Allen is enough to get Milwaukee to bite in this situation. But if you throw in the Warriors pick package, I think they look at this deal and entertain it. And from the Suns' perspective, yeah, Jimmy Butler is another guy that raises the floor of your team. And you have Dillon Brooks already. You have Devin Booker. You got enough guys who are able to handle the ball. And so if you want a gritty team and a very annoying team to play against, what two better players to have on your team than Dillon Brooks and Jimmy Butler? So this is my favorite one of all of the permutations, is a 3-team trade involving the Phoenix Suns, who are now, like last year, I was like, this offseason, I was like, why would the Suns really want Jimmy Butler? They're going to be rebuilding. They're not rebuilding anymore. They're a really good team this year. So maybe this is a time for Jimmy Butler to move to Phoenix and help them chase higher ground here in the Western Conference. And of course, the appeal for the Warriors is they get Giannis, pair him with Draymond and Stephen Curry, and they try one last time to go for it this year and next year. But this is the trade that I think makes the most sense if you were the Milwaukee Bucks. But there are other partners that maybe one-on-one, like a 2-team trade, makes some sense, but I kind of like this one, Kev. What do you think?
I think this would be the most likely path if the Warriors ended up with Giannis, where you'd see Jimmy Butler sent to a 3rd team. Now, there's not a lot of potential 3rd teams that would want Jimmy Butler, I don't think. I'd imagine maybe the Sixers, exchange him for Paul George, maybe the Clippers, like really desperate team like that, change the energy in that room even more. But I can't see many other Jimmy Butler teams that make more sense than the Phoenix Suns. I'd say the Suns make the most sense by far, and that's probably you don't want Jimmy Butler if you're the Bucks. So I'd imagine it would have to be a 3-team trade if the Warriors end up with Giannis. And so there's other trades. I think if it's big market, we know he likes the Knicks. What if it's the Lakers? Would they put Austin Reeves on the table, who will be a free agent next summer with a player option for next year? Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, Gabe Vincent, Dalt Connect, and then give up 3 future pick swaps in 28, 30, and 32 with a 31 first to get Giannis and Cole Anthony back in the deal. I don't love it, again, for the Bucks. I mean, Austin Reeves would be a great acquisition, but if I'm the Bucks, I don't want just the player. I want the player and the picks. That's the way I feel about, this deal. It's the way I feel about the Heat. If it's the Miami Heat, if that's where Giannis wants to go, Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Terry Rozier, and with 2 pick swaps, with 2 first-round draft picks in the future. Again, like if it's Miami, if I'm the Bucks, I'm like, why would I accept this deal? Why would I derail my whole future? Like, we had these great years with Giannis, but I wouldn't accept a deal like this. And last year, months ago, Tom, when this was first a thing, Brian Windhorst was on Get Up, and he was talking about how Giannis, if he wants out, would go east. And the Knicks were mentioned, of course, and Boston was mentioned as well. Not as a clear-cut report by Windy, but just as like he would want to win where he goes, and the Celtics were mentioned. So what if the Celtics were to put Jaylen Brown on the table? Crazy trade. Go get Giannis. Send out Peyton Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, 2 future firsts in 26 and 31 with 2 swaps in 30 and 32. Why would the Bucks do this? Again, if Giannis has like these contending teams or big market teams on his list, if I'm a Bucks fan listening or watching this podcast right now, I'm like, are you kidding me? This is dumb. Yeah, it is dumb. That's the point of the exercise here. Some of these teams that could be on his list, they can't make offers that help your franchise for the post-Giannis era. That's the way I feel about some of these teams with this appeasing Giannis path, Tom. Do any of those make sense? Is there any logic to the Bucks doing this at all? Like, not this trade, but the Celtics deal, the Heat deal, the Lakers deal. Do you like any of those at all? Maybe the Lakers one.
Well, I think, what is the goal if you're the Milwaukee Bucks? Is your goal to stay competitive and reload because you don't have your 2026 first pick, because now the Atlanta Hawks have the ability to swap that? Yeah. That's the question for me, is what is the goal? Because you say that it's a dumb trade, but you're getting the finals MVP in this trade. Like, that's not a terrible trade. If you're going to get rid of Giannis Antetokounmpo, you're getting an all-NBA, all-star caliber player in Jaylen Brown, who is, I will say, not like the number one rebuilding foundational superstar that you would want in a trade if you're getting rid of Giannis. But this all gets back to my theory that we should have done this over in the offseason. They should have traded Giannis this offseason, because now you're dealing with a guy who's got this calf injury, and we know that we have a league that is very scared of calf injuries now. And so you weren't able to have the same sort of leverage that you did a couple months ago. And now you're sitting here at 10-13. Giannis has a calf injury that is very strange. Second time that he's had this issue. And all of his athleticism is predicated on making sure he's healthy. Giannis Antetokounmpo is not a guy who's able to age gracefully if he's not as strong and as fast as he used to be. So you have to make sure that when you acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo, that calf is okay and that groin is okay, and then make sure, yes, he's Giannis, but at the end of the day, we've seen so many injuries to star players in today's NBA that I think the team that was going to acquire Giannis Antetokounmpo is probably like, look, we're not going to put in the whole kitchen sink here. And for Jaylen Brown and a couple firsts to go to Milwaukee, I don't think it's as crazy as you suggest. And I would even think that some Boston fans in that deal would say that's too much for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Kev,
we're not giving up Pritchard. No Pritchard.
I know. Anybody but him. Like, you could throw in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, fine, but not Peyton Pritchard. I think, Kev, to me, does San Antonio make the most sense because of their ability to put in all of the, like, think about what they could put into a trade for Milwaukee, right? Like, that seems like, to me, if there's a one team destination that could make the most sense from an asset standpoint of what would make Milwaukee the happiest, I think it's got to be San Antonio.
It definitely, the Spurs are probably at the top of the list, and I think they're the path too. The Bucks send Giannis to the highest bidder, and it happens to be a team that he's open to going to. I think they're one of the two teams I would put in that category, and I have a fake trade for them where Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, Kelly Olynyk, and then a whole bunch of picks. The Spurs could give up the 26 Hawks first, 28 Celtics first, top one protected, a 2030 Mavs or Wolves first, a 2031 Kings swap. That could be highly valuable down the line, considering Sacramento is never in the playoffs. Yeah, or right now. So, I mean, look, maybe Spurs fans are probably going to say, we're not giving up Harper. Okay, well, then maybe you have other picks that you put into this deal instead, or maybe you give Castle instead. And if it's not Castle, again, they have more picks that they could put on the table. But something along these lines, to me, this is more, if I'm a Bucks fan, I'm like, okay, I can live with this. We get a guy that has star potential. We get a good player in Devin Vassell, and we get, good collection of future draft picks. This is the type of deal that I would want if I'm in that Bucks front office. And this is the type of deal I would seek out. And if you're Giannis Antetokounmpo, San Antonio, to me, would be one of the ideal situations, if not the ideal situation. You would be Twin Towers again with Victor Wembanyama and you, just like David Robinson and Tim Duncan back in the 90s, early 2000s. It'd kind of be throwing it back to that era. They haven't won yet. There's a nemesis in the Western Conference and the Oklahoma City Thunder to go take down. You can be the team that potentially does that. And he fits this team. He just does. Compared next to Wemby with De'Aaron Fox, I think it would work here with this system, with his style of play. And so with San Antonio, would you be willing to give up Harper for Giannis, or are you keeping Harper? Is he off the table? What's your Spurs deal look like, Tom, for Giannis?
Yeah, it looks a lot like this one. And the reason why I think Milwaukee loves this deal is because it kind of diversifies these picks. Because if you're trading Giannis and then you're going to ask them, hey, give me all your picks, you're acquiring picks that are probably going to be at the end of the first round, right? So even if you do trade to the Spurs and you're like, hey, I want your picks, they're able to put in a Hawks, the Celtics, like you're saying, multiple teams' first round picks. And so you have a much more valuable upside with these picks in this pick package than, say, if you trade them to the Knicks, and then if in this alternate reality you trade them to the Knicks and say, give me all your first round picks, you're kind of sabotaging your pick value. So I do think that this is a really good situation for the San Antonio Spurs, because they have Stephon Castle, they have De'Aaron Fox, they have Victor Wembanyama. So you could look at this situation and say, Dylan Harper, we lucked into Dylan Harper, and then we can parlay this into Giannis Antetokounmpo, a two-time MVP. Absolutely, I make this deal if I'm the San Antonio Spurs. And I think this is one of those situations where you look at it and you say, if we have the ability to get this guy who thrived next to Brook Lopez, a stretch five who slung 3-pointers, and then defensively a rim protector who could save Giannis from having to go vertical every time down the floor as a rim protector. You got the best version of, you got like a supersized version of Brook Lopez and then some with Victor Wembanyama. So it's a perfect fit from a personnel standpoint and an asset standpoint. So if Giannis is open to this, and we don't know that, I think this makes sense for both sides.
I mean, to me, if he's not open to it, I'd still do it if I'm the Spurs. I'd still do it if I'm the Bucks. It's a cold business. I mean, everything we've seen, this year, every year in the NBA. Ultimately, sometimes what you want in life and definitely in sports isn't always best for you. Kawhi Leonard gets sent to the Raptors. He wins a championship there. I mean, it's one of the most memorable championships we've seen in the last decade. Taking down the Warriors, granted the Warriors got hurt, but I remember seeing Kawhi limp through the locker room. It was heroic. I mean, Kawhi is going to be remembered for a lot of reasons, aspiration, the load management. But I'm also going to have a memory in my mind of Kawhi powering that team to an NBA Finals, and he left, unfortunately. But sometimes what you always want isn't what's best for you. He won a title there and could have won more if he ended up staying.
And you think he's happy right now?
No,
you think
of course
Kawhi's
not.
happy right now?
And
miserable.
What he wanted.
James Harden, you think he's happy right now? Miserable. Chris Paul, you think he's happy right now with the way things went when the heart wants what it wants, but at some point,
how about Paul George, Tom? Paul George got sent to OKC, had the best years of his career, and then he leaves, goes to the Clippers, and now he's in Philadelphia because it was so bad there. So, I mean, look, what you want isn't always what's best for you, which is why I think for Giannis, yes, you have your preferred destinations. San Antonio should definitely be on that list for him, considering the opportunity there. But even if it's not, if I'm the Spurs, like if I have an opportunity to go get Giannis, why would I not go get Giannis Antetokounmpo if I'm the San Antonio Spurs? I feel that way about the Spurs. I feel that way if I'm the Rockets as well, Tom. That's the other deal I think would make a lot of sense from the Bucks standpoint and from a Giannis standpoint. If the Rockets were to send Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith, Fred VanVleet, Dorian Finney-Smith, and a collection of future draft picks to the Bucks, 27 Nets first, 28 Rockets first, 29 Mavs or Suns first, 2031 Rockets first, get back Giannis, AJ Green. Look, Amen Thompson is awesome. I thought he was the defensive player of the year last year. I think he should have won it last year. He's amazing, and he could be really great, but he is not Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the Rockets have a chance to be the team that goes toe-to-toe with the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference Finals or the second round. And this increases their odds of winning that series. If you add Giannis to Şengün, to Reed Shepherd, our guy, to Kevin Durant, if you have that team with all their depth and all their versatility and all the different ways they can play, can you imagine a lineup, Tom, with Steven Adams, Alperen Şengün, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Kevin Durant, and then a fifth, take your pick out there? That would be crazy.
AJ Green and Reed Shepherd could be the two best shooters in the NBA right now. And you put them next to Giannis and KD and Alperen Şengün, like they're going to have a field day. It's going to be unreal if this trade goes down. And I would say if I'm Milwaukee, I say yes and hang up the phone. If you're offering me Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith, and a boatload of firsts, done. Like, say no more.
Might be
I'm
too
making
much.
That trade.
I think it's the best deal of all the ones on here.
For sure. I mean, Jabari Smith as the centerpiece alone, I think would get the deal done. But then you throw in Amen Thompson too. Look, Reed Shepherd, if he has a weakness in his game, for sure, it's defensively. But you got Steven Adams and Giannis Antetokounmpo behind him. You're gonna let Reed Shepherd be Reed Shepherd and just launch from downtown and be this amazing flamethrower for you at the point guard position. But is that enough in terms of like, if you're going into the postseason, if you're the Houston Rockets and your starting point guard is Reed Shepherd, how do you feel about things? Maybe you go out and you get a Chris Paul or something like that to stabilize and have a little bit more veteran leadership instead of having a second-year guard be your point guard. But then again, Kev, in today's NBA, if you have Alperen Şengün and Giannis on your team and Kevin Durant on your team, those are your point guards. You're running your offense through them. I don't have any worries about Alperen Şengün running your offense, especially if you got Giannis in transition. It's not like this is 1995 anymore and you need a John Stockton type out there.
No, it's not that type of year. It's not that type of decade era of basketball anymore at all. And so it can definitely work for the Rockets to have by committee shot creation. I think for Giannis, if I'm him, if I'm in his circle, I would put the Rockets and Spurs undoubtedly on my list. As I said, I think, think about years back after he won the finals. Giannis talked about, the path of joining a super team versus the path of the hardest path. These are kind of like super-ish teams, what the Rockets and the Spurs would have, but they're not traditional throwback super teams of that era with stars coming together, forming a new team. To me, this still would be a hard path because the number one team in the Western Conference is still the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that could win 74, 75 plus games this year that has dynasty upside. And so if you're on the Rockets or Spurs and you can be that team that year in, year out has a chance to contend against that team and compete against them in the playoffs, that is a hard path. And so for Giannis, I think the other part of it here, Tom, is like John Horst whiffed on pick after pick after pick. He's part of the reason why they're in this situation. But Giannis isn't without blame either. He's the guy who wanted Adrian Griffin. He wanted them to trade for Damian Lillard. He's the guy who wanted Doc Rivers. He's the guy who didn't want to have like a retooling year. Giannis isn't without blame here, as he's kind of had a louder voice in the Bucks decision-making process over the last 5 years or so. He needs to also go to a team where it's hands off the wheel and it's a good organization that's running things well, and just play and don't worry about some of those things. And I think some of these teams, the Rockets, the Spurs, and maybe some teams also on his list, the Knicks are also run very, very well. They make sense as places for him to go and just play, just win. And don't feel like you have to have a loud voice with all the decisions anymore. That hasn't gone well for Giannis in recent years, Tom.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I do think that there's a gut tax that he has to worry about too, is that if he's going to be begging to go to one particular destination and steadfast with that, the team's going to have to give up a ton of ready-made players like the Knicks did this with Carmelo Anthony, and it didn't end up in a championship. And in many ways, it was a failure because they had to give up so much to Denver in order to get Carmelo Anthony in a trade rather than sign him in free agency. And that gut tax that you point out, the Rockets deal, if you're the Rockets, I'm much more open to trading Reed Shepherd, of course, than Amen Thompson. Jabari Smith becomes a lot more expendable in that deal. If you're getting Giannis Antetokounmpo, you already have Kevin Durant. Where's the space for Jabari Smith, where you're looking at Alperen Şengün and Steven Adams? That makes sense. I can add Giannis without taking away too much from my roster, in the same way that Reed Shepherd, because he's the guy coming off the bench for Amen Thompson, it seems like I can add Giannis without gutting my team. The other teams on this list that we talked about, it's like, if you're the Knicks, are you willing to trade Karl Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby to get Giannis? It seems like we're back to square one with the Carmelo Anthony trade, where it's like, are we really going to give up a lot of key pieces to add Giannis? And at this age, Giannis, where it's not like they got a 10-year runway with him. So I do think, Kev, the trade, if you're going to do the Knicks while we're here, if you're the Knicks, I think it's a 3-team trade. You move Karl Anthony Towns to Phoenix, where he can reunite finally with Devin Booker, one of his buddies. And they have a big opening at that power forward and center position there in Phoenix. They're trying to contend. They're trying to have a redemptive season here. Matt Ishbia hires Brian Gregory for his GM and brings in first-year head coach Jordan Ott, and then is now a winning outfit. I feel like if you do a 3-team trade, Jalen Green goes to Milwaukee, and you get Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Knicks, Karl Anthony Towns to Phoenix, I feel like that is a 3-team trade that if you're the Knicks, I'm okay with getting rid of Karl Anthony Towns if I'm getting Giannis in return. But OG, that feels like that it might be a bridge too far.
I totally agree with you. I think that those types of 3-way iterations are really what make most sense, especially from the Knicks standpoint. But again, from a Bucks standpoint, I don't. That's not what I want. Like, that's, to me, that isn't a big enough return for Giannis, which is why I keep thinking about, could there be a path where they send him to a surprise team that's not on his list, like the Hawks, for example. The Hawks can give the Bucks back 2 of their picks, the 26 Bucks or Pelicans first, which could be the number 1 pick in the draft, the 2027 Bucks or Pelicans first as well. They can give up multiple firsts with Trae Young. There's a deal like that. What if there's like a total surprise team out of nowhere? One of these teams with a ton of draft picks, Danny Ainge, out of nowhere says, "Hey, we can trade up to 9 first-round draft picks. We just drafted Ace Bailey. We're gonna go get Giannis and pair him with Lauri Markkanen." Maybe it could be a team like that. Like, what if the Brooklyn Nets decided to do something crazy along those lines? There's these teams like the Hornets. They can trade up to 8 first-round draft picks. Maybe there's some surprise random team that comes out of nowhere and says, "We're gonna go get Giannis Antetokounmpo." But ultimately, if I'm one of those teams, it's too much of a risk considering the short-term contract Giannis is on. The only team that has a bunch of first-round picks that could win on the other side of it, Tom, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I do not think this will happen, but this is the deal that would break the NBA, that would make people quit watching basketball, is if they sent Isaiah Hartenstein, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, Nikola Topic, and as many picks as it would take to go get Giannis. This is the deal that should never happen, should be banned, but it would turn them potentially into the 1960s Celtics. So I wouldn't fault them if they ended up going for it. I don't think it would happen, but they have the ammo to have the best offer on the table, which is the crazy thing in all of this. They could make the best offer if they wanted to.
They absolutely could, man.
Oh,
That's
man.
the scary thing. Like they could have the best trade offer while being 21-1 and not really lose much. I mean, I love Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe are great stories, Isaiah Hartenstein, but I'm telling you, man, if you told me that Giannis Antetokounmpo would be traded in 2025 with the principal player going back to Milwaukee as Isaiah Hartenstein, I would have thought you're crazy. But because OKC has stockpiled everyone's best pick over the next 10 years, it is a debate. It is a debate worth having, is whether OKC would have the trump card on all of these trades based on how many picks they have, Kev. It's
Would you do it if you're OKC? Would you do it, Tom? Would you trade for Giannis if you were Sam? You would. If you're Sam Presti, you would do it.
Yeah, if it meant I didn't give up Chet Holmgren, I would do this deal. And I know the counter argument is, look, they're on a basically an 80 win pace right now without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Why would you fix something that isn't broken? And I would say the team is so SGA heavy right now. I feel like adding Giannis would help just kind of level out your risk in today's superstar era and the injury question. I feel like adding a Giannis Antetokounmpo who can carry you in ways that, like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like, I mean, J-Dub is back, but the weight that is on SGA's shoulders and everything he does for this team on both ends of the floor, it's incredible. And I think in today's NBA, you got to have multiple horses. And that's why I think like Giannis trade to OKC would make sense without giving up Chet or J-Dub. Yeah, dude. Yeah. Come on. You're saying you think about it, right? You think about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Would you do it?
Yeah, I would do it if I were OKC. I mean, look, just because if you're in your fantasy leagues, your fantasy basketball leagues, just because you have the best record in the league doesn't mean you should stop tinkering with your team. It's the same thing in reality with basketball. Just because you are on an 80 win pace, it doesn't mean maybe it does mean that, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop tinkering with your team when it's an opportunity to get Giannis. I do think it means don't bring in a voice like Chris Paul around the edges, which could make a dramatic change. But I do think adding a player of Giannis's caliber, Hartenstein's going to be a free agent in another year. You know, some of these other guys are going to be big money free agents that have to be replaced eventually. You know, Wiggins type, or if it's Lou Dort in the deal instead, or Case and Wallace instead. There's different pieces that could go in there. Those guys are eventually going to be lost and will have to be replaced. It's just the reality of the situation with the Thunder. At some point, it's going to happen. These guys are going to get big money deals elsewhere. And so if you could consolidate some of those pieces into Giannis and Antetokounmpo, yes, please. Yes, please. But that deal above any of the deals, he could go to the Rockets. He could go to the Spurs. He could go to the Lakers. Giannis could go to any of these big market teams, these teams with star players existing. No deal would break the NBA more than Giannis going to the Thunder. It would just be absurd if that ended up happening, Tom. Absurd.
You know what? If I start hearing that Will Rogers International Airport in OKC is adding an Athens flight, I think that's all we need to know. Like, if he really wants to be closer to Athens and Greece, and which is why, getting to New York is very appealing to Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's why these Midwestern options where it's San Antonio and OKC, like maybe he's at a different point in his life where he wants to be closer to home. I just feel like, man, if you're going to OKC and joining this team, maybe he feels a certain way that like he feels like that is a tall task because the bar is so high, so much pressure on Giannis going to OKC. They've already won a title and they're now trying to, start a dynasty. That's a lot to put on your shoulders. But like Houston did this with the Golden State Warriors, and they almost did it. They almost took down the Golden State Warriors in the peak James Harden era, going against Steph and Clay and Draymond. And so there is a precedent for the Houston Rockets to say, look, there's no other way we're going to take down Goliath. We got to make these moves to take down this team. And they're looking at OKC for the next decade. So yeah, I would put all the chips in. Maybe not Amen Thompson in that trade scenario, but in order to take down OKC, you have to be bold.
And by the way, Tom, on the note of flights to Greece, a couple months back when that Knicks stuff first started trickling out, I posted how, hey, New York is one of the only NBA team cities that has direct flights from New York to Greece. And people made fun of me. They're like, well, Giannis, he can fly private. I don't think people realize how expensive flying private is. I mean, that would cost him like upwards of $150K, $200K to do that over the course of, multiple times a year for his family to have, the kids and his wife go back and forth. They're flying first class. Internationally, it's like sometimes it's a very nice flight. They're flying first class on a quote unquote standard flight. They're not, I don't think they'd be flying private many times per year. And so, it's beside the point.
He's making 60 million, not 60 billion. And there's a big difference between the M and the B there. Yeah.
And Giannis also a stickler with money. There's been stories about him in the past where he maxes out bank accounts in cash. And there's been plenty of stories about Giannis reported on about how he is with his money. So I don't think he's throwing money around on private flights from Greece to the United States, every month. It's outrageous to expect that, despite the massive amount of money he makes. We got a little bit of news during our recording. We're going to close with here, Tom. Yeah, Shams Charania did say Giannis is going to be sidelined for approximately 2 to 4 weeks with a right calf strain. So he has officially been diagnosed with please trade me-itis. And so that's the latest news.
Is that a clinical diagnosis there?
Yeah, it's a real Dr. Brian Suter told me about it.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Brian. I didn't mean to put that on you. It is wild that it happened on Thursday night, or sorry, on Wednesday night that injury happened. It's got to be real.
It's got to be real. It's got to be real,
Tom. Man. 2 to 4 weeks. Okay. The NBA is going to be all over this now because they did. Did you see this on Wednesday that the NBA fined the 76ers for Joel Embiid's injury report when he did play? Joel Embiid did play after he was ruled out earlier in the day. Then he played later that night. And so the NBA was like, all right, I know that he did play and we want this participation policy to encourage teams from playing their stars when they can. But you ruled him out earlier in the day, and a certain
so funny
betting community would be very upset if we didn't come down hard on this. So, yeah, we're going to fine you for playing Joel Embiid. What a weird world we live in right now and work in, where the NBA is fining an NBA team for playing Joel Embiid. Think about that. So they're going to be all over this Giannis injury. Like, how legit is this? I think it's legit. For the record, Brian, I think it's legit. Kev,
I'm kidding. But Brian never said that to me. I'm joking. If people don't have their sarcasm detectors on, if they're not activated as you listen to the podcast, it was totally sarcastic. Brian did not say that.
All right, so 2 to 4 weeks. This isn't.
Yeah, 2 to 4 weeks.
Takes them through Christmas Day. Yeah. So this is going to
Yeah.
be,
Well,
this
maybe,
is
maybe 2 weeks is what the 18th. So at a minimum, the 18th, he could return at that point.
sure.
That's
Sure. I'm just
possible.
looking at the schedule here. They don't play on Christmas Day. That's right. So they don't play
No.
Christmas Day. They have a road trip that begins December 21st. So that's 17 days out, a 5 game road trip. Um, yeah, they don't play the Knicks anytime soon here. So yeah, this
Well,
is
the Knicks
interesting.
play on Christmas Day. The Knicks play on Christmas Day. The Spurs play on Christmas Day. The Thunder play on Christmas Day. The Warriors play on Christmas Day. The Rockets play on Christmas Day. The Lakers play on Christmas Day. So a lot of options that we went through where Giannis could indeed be playing on Christmas Day for some of these teams. That would be a little under 3 weeks since this apparent right calf strain. It might be real. I'm joking in part, but boy, the timing sure is suspect, Tom. It sure is suspect. 3 minutes into the game of the day, all that news drops. This was fun, Tom. Last question for you. Do you think he gets traded? Or is this
Yeah.
just another tease? I think he gets
No,
traded too. I think this is the time. I think this is it. I do.
I think he might have played his last game for the Milwaukee Bucks.
I know. And Chris Middleton hits a clutch down the stretch winner. The Wizards beating the Bucks is kind of what breaks it. Something poetic about that. Something, kind of beautiful. That's Chris Middleton, a playoff hero for the Milwaukee Bucks and all those great teams for so many years. And who knows how different things would be if Middleton never got hurt, never slipped. Could have been multiple for the Bucks, but ultimately, I think it's a shame that it's in this situation, Tom. I think it's a shame that he's out, regardless of the reason. But I think Bucks fans are always going to be Giannis fans, no matter
All right,
what, no
well,
matter what happens here, no matter what.
all right, well, let's put it down on the record here. So if we both think that he's going to be traded here, who do you
Hmm.
think it is?
Rockets or Spurs?
Yeah. I'm going to put the Knicks in there too. I think it's more likely that the Rockets go in. I think it's less likely that the Spurs. So I would peg it 1, 2, and 3 because the Knicks, certainly if they had picks, they would be the number one on the list. But they don't have the picks. They don't have the young talent that a team like Milwaukee would want. And so they'd have to invite third and fourth teams, which the Spurs and the Rockets don't have to do that. So the
Hmm.
ease of the path is so much clearer for the San Antonio Spurs and the Houston Rockets. That's why I put them higher on the list.
And plus, send them west if you're the Bucks. That could be a part of it here as well. Send them to the opposing conference. But we'll see what happens. I'm sure we'll learn more. Who knows? There could be more that comes out later today and the days to come. I'm sure we'll have more to talk about when you come back on again next Thursday. Tom, thank you for joining me today, man.
You got it, KOC.
Thanks again to Tom Haberstroh. Let's talk about NBA draft and college basketball with Tate Frazier. All right, it's time for draft class, and joining me today, Tate Frazier from The Ringer. Tate, how are you?
I'm doing well, KOC. I'm happy to be here. Happy to see your face. Happy to talk about this draft class. I was lucky enough to be at the McDonald's All American game. I got to talk to all these guys, all these freshmen who are kind of lighting up college basketball right now. So I'm excited to dive into a few of them. But also, we have some stars from overseas and some seniors that are making a name for themselves. So college basketball, as is tradition, a good season and a lot of fun. So I'm excited to break it all down with you, man.
It's been a good year so far. We'll mix in, of course, some straight up college basketball talk alongside the NBA draft look ahead as well. I want to start out with a new segment with you, Tate. Student of the month. This is the player that not enough people are talking about. They're playing really well, outperforming outperforming expectations this year. Who's your student of the month for the month of November?
First off, I'm honored. I'm going to act like I'm part of the Student of the Month Club here by being a part of this new segment. But my Student of the Month is a senior, so he's had a lot of time in school. He's learned how to kind of figure out his game a little bit, and it's Auburn's Keyshawn Hall. Now, when people watch Auburn, I think they all talk about Tahad Pettiford. He was the big name that went back, and obviously Tahad Pettiford has a lot of game. But the real star of this team, if you've been watching Auburn, yes, the games haven't been as expected. No Bruce Pearl. We got Stephen Pearl coaching this team, so it's a little bit different. But Keyshawn Hall has been so good getting to the rim, so good at getting to the free throw line, KOC. That was really the thing I wanted to talk to you about with Keyshawn Hall. I think he leads now the entire country in FTA's free throw attempts. It's about 9.7 free throw attempts per game. And I think just translating that ability to get to the foul line, to get to the basket, He has developed sort of as a player, a playmaker in general. And I think that those skill sets, I mean, yes, he's a little bit older. He's 22 years old, so he's not going to be your lottery level player. But when you're looking for guys that are like a TJ Shannon type player, a guy who could come in a little bit later, make an impact for you, I feel like Keyshawn Hall might be one of those guys. So I think he's worthy of the tab of student of the month, but I want to get your thoughts on him as well.
I mean, 6'7", 7 foot ish wingspan. We don't know the exact measurement. He 21 points per game, 9 boards. Love how he rebounds. Love the activity. 40% from three. He's got like this weird lefty kind of like he takes his guide hand, his offhand off pretty early. It looks kind of like almost a push shot sometimes as the
Yeah.
ball releases if you take a snapshot at the end. But I like him, man. I mean, fourth school in 4 years for him. UNLV as a freshman to George Mason to UCF, now at Auburn. He's just kind of a quirky, squirmy player. The way he moves at his size with his handle, it's a little bit loose, but it works. And he can finish with either hand at the rim. He's a creative ball handler. There's a good energy to him. And with him
Hmm.
defensively, I wish he were locked down, but I feel like he's offensively, he has enough tools to be a guy that gets a good opportunity in the NBA. I think he's a good choice for this first student of the month. It's an awesome first month for him. Anytime you're a wing, 6'7", averaging 21 points per game, 9 boards, 2 assists, elite efficiency, that's what this award is supposed to epitomize, Tate. So I'm very happy with this first choice for our first one of the college season.
I had a lot of pressure when you texted me. You were like, "I'm doing student of the month." I went through all these different names. Adai Mara was a guy that came to mind at Michigan. He's had a really good year. Another transfer from UCLA that's found a new home, a new place. So an old face in a new place. We love those guys in college basketball. We see a lot of them. But yeah, Keyshawn Hall. I mean, he was not supposed to be, like I said, the banner guy for Auburn. We're supposed to be talking about Tahad Pettiford. Now Pettiford has been good. But if you watch this team, he's obviously the best player on the team. He is the star player on this team. And the team might not be as good as expected this year because they've kind of had a bumpy start to the season. But when they've been good, it's been because of Keyshawn Hall. And when they've been bad, it's when he's gotten in foul trouble or, they just play a more superior team. So, I mean, Keyshawn Hall is definitely the guy for this group. And I'm excited to see how he develops throughout the season. And I do like the leadership as well. I feel like he's kind of the guy that is in the huddle speaking to this team and trying to get them all riled up as well. So I think that's another encouraging sign that's not even basketball related. It's personality rated. And I think that's another thing that will translate to the next level.
So Auburn has 2 games this week. They got NC State on Wednesday, and then they go west on Saturday, and they face number 2 ranked and undefeated Arizona. And with Arizona, we know what they did on opening night against Florida. Koa Peat had 30 points in his first game, one of the best debuts we've seen from a freshman prospect ever, definitely in recent memory. Can you tell me, like, for people who haven't watched Arizona since that opener against Florida, what has Koa Peat been up to? What have you seen from him? What do you like? What do you dislike?
Well, if you have been kind of locked in on Cameron Boozer, which I feel like most of the country has been, and I'm sure you have been because there's a conversation, is he the number one pick? That obviously is a conversation that a lot of people will have throughout the rest of the season. The Arkansas game, 35 points, 35 minutes, obviously what he did last night against Florida. But Koa Pete, to me, is a very similar vein to Cameron Boozer. I think he might actually translate a little bit better to the next level. I think Cameron Boozer is kind of the perfect player for college basketball. Koa Pete, to me, is a guy that maybe at the next level can do some things that, maybe takes him into another echelon as far as a prospect. I've been thoroughly impressed with him. The one game that I saw him in person was the UCLA game out here. He did not have his best game. He was a little bit spooked out here in, the Intuit Dome. But again, that was a Jaden Bradley game. It's also a Mick Cronin kind of muck it up game. So that was his welcome to college moment. And I think that was the one time if you wanted to kind of pick and nitpick his game a little bit, you could go to that UCLA tape. But just in general, he's a really solid kid. He's a really solid player. He's won everywhere. I think he won 4 state championships in high school. So he was a 4-for-4 type kid. He also played in his high school championship game with a broken hand. When I was at the McDonald's All-American game, he still had the cast on his hand. They're all going through the workouts and everything. And I just kind of was impressed with how engaged he was in the gym despite not being able to play. So he was kind of locked in with the guys, locked in with what they were running with drills, talking to coaches. I mean, you know how it is, Kevin. They have, Brad Stevens was in the building. It's kind of funny how, you got NBA executives around a bunch of high school players, but that's kind of how the McDonald's event works. And I think a lot of people were observing sort of how he handled himself and carried himself. And he carried himself like a superstar. And obviously what he's been able to do for this Arizona team is elevate them to a team that could potentially win the national championship. And we haven't been talking about them in that vein for a couple years. So I'm really impressed with what I've seen. I think the scoring acumen is there. I think his ability to kind of control a game with his own pace is really special. And I think we've, not even seen his best version of basketball despite being so good in that Florida game to open up the season.
Now, with him, I think there will be listeners who are, draft heads that listen to the show and they're like, better than Boozer in the NBA. Some people are going to say Koa Peat is a undersized big. That's going to be the pushback you get. But you mentioned that you think there's some untapped potential with him. What is that untapped potential you see with Koa Peat moving forward as he develops in the years to come?
Well, I think he's a power forward in the NBA. So I don't know if he's going to be a 5 in the NBA. So I guess he would be undersized if you slide him at the 5. But it is funny in college basketball where, it's actually a superpower to be one of those players in college basketball. Look at Tyler Hansbrough. He's like the greatest center in college basketball history, maybe the greatest player in college basketball history. He's a 6'9" guy playing the 5. Which I think Boozer and Koa Peat are kind of those guys that can slide down into that position and into that role. That was no knock on Cameron Boozer. Don't take it as a knock. I think that they're both really talented, and I do think that
you are
Cameron
a Carolina
Boozer,
guy, Tate. You are a Carolina guy. So.
I'm not knocking Cameron Boozer for that reason. I will say Cameron Boozer was a lovely kid to meet and talk to, and I did not want to like him, but I came away thoroughly impressed with how much you could take away from how good of a kid he was. But the first step to me in general for Koa Peat is a little bit more athletic and a little bit more impressive. And I think that's something when you talk about translate, that would be the thing that I would point to. And again, I'm not pitting these guys against each other. I just think that they're a little bit similar, their play styles in college. And I think that, at the next level, I look at a Cameron Boozer like in a Kevin Love type vein a little bit, like a little bit more fundamental. And I do think that Koa Peat has a little bit more of a pop potentially athletically at the next level. But again, Koa Peat's not going to be in the number 1 pick conversation. He's going to be in the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 range. I understand that. But he's a lot of fun to watch. And if you're not watching him play, it will be fascinating to see how he matches up against this Auburn team on Saturday. And I wouldn't be shocked if Auburn gives them a little bit of a run for their money because Auburn is looking for one of those wins to kind of get things back on the rails. So Koa Peat, that would be a fun one to watch because he's going to face a little bit of toughness and athleticism. And we'll see how he matches up against it.
I mean, that Saturday in college basketball is huge. You got 5 undefeateds playing. Of course, we just mentioned Auburn going against undefeated Arizona, but then there's also Purdue, 8-0, number 1 team in the nation against Iowa State, both undefeated. Braden Smith, of course, who, played with Zach Edey with Purdue. He's still the biggest name in that game. But one of my weekly movers, one of the guys that I've really liked over on Iowa State, a junior forward, is Milan Momcilovic. He's a forward. He's got size, 6'8", shooting 52% on catch and shoot threes, 48% on dribble jumpers. He can attack closeouts, makes the right play. To me, he looks like an NBA wing, NBA forward, Tate. Do you see NBA potential here in Momcilovic?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of his game. I think he, Lipsy is probably the guy that if you're a college basketball fan, that's the kind of the face of the Iowa State team. But in reality, especially if you watch the Players Era Festival, Momcilovic was their best player by far and had some huge moments there, especially had one late drive in that game where he gets a contest at the rim and he's able just to basically pull the ball back away and just throw it in like a little run or float or whatever you want to call it. And to me, that's like the evolution of Momcilovic. He's a 37% career 3-point shooter, which someone with that type of shooting is something to, obviously gets a lot of, GMs getting their eyebrows raised and saying, wait a second, maybe this is a guy we can look into. You mentioned the size also. And, look what Iowa State's been able to do with Otzelberger. Sweet 16s the past couple of years. I think this year they're going to be in the mix, probably a top 3 seed, you would suspect at this point, based on what we've seen with this group. And I think it's also great that we're pronouncing his name properly. Last year was Momcilovic. And we've now come to figure out that it's Momcilovic. So, we're moving in the right direction there. And he's a really, really good player and a very steady guy. And it feels like, a Bogdanovich type or something like that, where you could, not to like put the Vitches together. But again, I think he's going to be a good player. And I'm not sure he's like drafted in the first round or drafted, maybe late second round or something like that. But a team that takes a swing on him, I think they'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, he's on the radar, and I think that's what he's shown so far this season with his development.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the proper pronunciation. A lot of people get on me for my pronunciation of MOM, mom. I say mom, mom. It's like a New England thing instead of mom,
Mm.
like most of the country does. So I think I was saying
It's all right. I'm from the
Momcilovic.
South, KOC. I can't say anything right. Anything I say, they say it's wrong. So it's okay. Don't worry about
I
it.
mean,
Don't let the haters get to you.
yeah, and it doesn't matter. I'm used to it. Iowa State though, Brock Purdy,
Oh yeah,
Tyrese Halliburton, and then Milan Momcilovic. I mean, here we go. It's starting to
yeah.
get some pros in the NBA and NFL. The game of the week
Ames,
though,
Iowa, baby.
we have Auburn, Arizona, Iowa State, Purdue, Duke, Michigan State, 12 Eastern on Fox. Duke 9-0, Michigan State 8-0. Is Duke better this year, you think, Tate, than they were last year when they went to the Final Four?
In a word, no. Not even close, in my opinion. But it's okay. They don't have to be better than last year's Duke team. Last year's Duke team, talking about just passing the eye test. My goodness. I mean, Cooper Flagg is an incredible talent, as we all know. That's not anything that we can really obviously argue against. It's just the reality of the fact. The other thing that we really didn't really give credit during the season is how good Con Knipple is, and I think now we're seeing it at the next level. But Duke is a really good team. I think they still have a point guard problem. Last year, they had the luxury of a point forward who is, Cooper Flagg. They also had a great situation with Proctor there who could step in. They also had Con Knipple, who's one of the best like ball handlers, pick and roll type players, figuring out the short roll, playing off Cooper Flagg. So like they had this kind of a superpower as a group. I'm still shocked they did not win the national championship. I think it's going to be one of those teams we look back on and say, how the hell did they not win the national championship? So, no, I don't think they're better than the Duke team last year, but that doesn't mean that they're not the best team in college basketball this year. And that is really, fascinating because that just shows how much talent that they really have as an organization, as a program. I think Gungba's been a really nice piece for them next to Boozer, especially rim protection wise. Um, and just across the board, like they just have so much talent and they have guys coming off the bench that can make a difference and the depth of this group. And you have to give John Shire a whole lot of credit because Shire has done a really good job of like finding how to touch like the touch points of this team, right? Knowing when, a certain guy needs to get a certain touch and knowing, when to get Cameron Boozer involved in the game or when he's not been as active as he should be. So, I mean, this Duke team is really good. I think the fascinating thing that we'll see this weekend, specifically against Michigan State, they're kind of hanging their hat on the toughness as they always do. And there's a lot of pulling and tugging and holding and, that physical style of college basketball that a lot of people, might not see unless they're playing college basketball. As you heard from VJ Edgecombe, he hates college basketball. I think this is the reason why for games like this, where you're going to get held, you're not going to have freedom of motion. Michigan State has a coach that knows they can't call it every single time, KOC. So Duke is going to face the most physical test. But luckily, they have a physical specimen in Cameron Boozer, who's named after Cameron Indoor. So I think I think Cameron Boozer is going to have a great game this weekend. But again, this will be the first time that they're physically going to be hounded by a team. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond and react. But again, the Duke team from last year, I don't want to disparage that group because that team was so good. I mean, they should have won the national championship. And I say that as a Carolina grad. So, that's saying something for me, KOC, that I'm shocked they did not win.
I mean, I think first of all, you're spot on. Michigan State, what they're going to do, they kind of do the Oklahoma City Thunder thing, where they're not going to blow the whistle every play. They just know that it's not going to happen, so they play with that physicality that can be very difficult on the opponent. And with last year's Duke team versus this year's Duke team, I agree with you. I'm curious, Tate, with what you said. Would Duke have won the national title last year if they played through Con Knipple instead of through Cooper Flagg?
At the end of the game, you're saying like the last possession, if they had decided to run it through Con Knipple, I think that they would have had more variety of options if they played through Knipple, and I mean that Con Knipple would have made the right read and made the right play, whether it was him taking the shot, him finding Cooper Flagg, him finding an open shooter in Proctor or whatever it is. I think he would have made the right read. The problem in that situation is if you don't give the ball, and I think that would be, John Shire would never say it on the record, but the problem is, the expectation is that the best player needs to have the ball in his hands. And I think Cooper Flagg is obviously the best player. And I think, unfortunately for Cooper, he had the expectation to take the shot. And that's one thing I've always given LeBron James a lot of credit for, is that he is always kind of like prided himself on like, I'll try to make the right play or the right read. Now, it might be for vanity why he does that, because he doesn't want the smoke of missing the shot. But again, it is something that is hard to do, and you expect, the guy to take the shot. And I feel like it put a lot of pressure on Cooper Flagg. But if John Shire doesn't draw up a play for Cooper Flagg, then everyone's like, what an idiot. He had Cooper Flagg, the number one pick, a generational talent, right? So, I mean, it's kind of a lose-lose situation, and obviously they lost the game. But the physicality of Houston is the reason they lost. I mean, that's really what it came down to, and that's what they're going to face this weekend against Michigan State.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately with Kahn, we saw what he did in those couple of games when Cooper was out at the beginning of March, and Kahn looked awesome with the ball in his hands. They kind of did go a little bit away from that. I felt like at times when they should have. And we're seeing, of course, what the Charlotte Hornets are doing with Con Knippel so far this season, just putting the ball in his hands. I mean, the Klay Thompson comparison that people make to Con, I get it because of the shooting and all that, but Con Knippel's averaging more pick and rolls per game than Klay ever did in his entire career. And he's a rookie.
Yeah.
In the first month and a half of his entire professional career. That number is just going to go up over time. He's going to get better over time with the ball in his hands. He was just on Jimmy Fallon the other night. Bye-bye, LaMelo. Goodbye.
Yeah.
We
got a new star in town. Yeah, it's great. I'm excited. I mean, Brandon Miller is a great wing, and I just need him to stay healthy. That's really the thing with Brandon Miller. You and I really like Brandon Miller, and I think I still believe in his potential with that team. But yeah, you're right. Con Knippel, I like the Klay Thompson comparison, because Klay, I mean, if he had the ball in his hands more and was off the dribble, he could obviously do and create a lot more. But I feel like he's almost like an Austin Reeves type, where it's like he's just so good at making the right read. Not to compare 1-to-1 with him and Austin Reeves, but I'm just saying with the pick and roll specifically, being able to make the right decision, whether it's in the short roll, whether it's taking a shot or making a decision, find a guy in the corner, whatever it is. So Con Knippel is a lot of fun to watch. My parents are actually in New York tonight, and they're going to go to the Knicks game, and they're going to see Con Knippel in person. And my mom, who is also a North Carolina grad, 1982, she said she's going to pull for Con. That's how much Con Knippel has won over, the people in Charlotte and North Carolina people. That's how good he is. Even Carolina fans are like, you know what? He's a good player. We like him. So Con Knippel, you're the star of the team.
I mean, he's amazing. Yeah, he really is, and it's only the beginning with that kid too. I'm very excited to see how Con develops over the course of time. With that Duke Michigan State game, we're kind of like in a glory days with the state of Michigan right now, Tate, aren't we? Michigan is 7-0. Michigan State is 8-0. Has it ever been better than this in the state of Michigan with these two teams?
I know it's a fascinating situation, because the football team looks horrible, and they're obviously a football state. But if you really break it even into the NBA and the NFL right now, right? The Lions are trending down. Michigan football is trending down. Michigan State football just fired their head coach. And then if you look on the basketball side, Detroit Pistons, number one team in the East. Michigan, arguably the best team in college basketball right now. If you watch the Players Era Festival, you probably believe that. Beat the hell out of everybody. And then Michigan State, I mean, just stacking up wins. A real test on Saturday, obviously. But Dusty May is kind of the belle of the ball in college basketball. And I do feel like at some point the NBA is going to see what Dusty May is doing down in college and say, hey, why can't this guy get pulled up the ranks? And we have a new Brad Stevens type golden boy situation on our hands. But for now, Michigan's a really good team. Their front court is incredible. Yaxel Lindeborg, Morez Johnson Jr., who transferred from Illinois, and then Adai Mara, who came from UCLA. So that front court is one of the best, if not the best in college basketball. Elliot Cadeau transferred over from North Carolina. As long as he doesn't turn the ball over, they've been a really, really good team. And over the past couple weeks, they went from 15 turnovers a game to around 12 turnovers a game. And that difference has really gotten this offense into a flow. And with those three guys in the front court, the backcourt doesn't have to do too much. It also helps with Namari Burnett shooting 50% from three, like he did during the Players Era Festival. So Michigan's a real title threat. I think a lot of people thought they'd have a good season, maybe not this good, but those two teams and Indiana and Purdue, those four teams are all teams that look like they could win the national championship right now. And Indiana maybe is a little bit of a stretch, but they look really good too. And they got a really good coach over there with DeVries. So, I mean, there you have it, KOC. The state of Michigan's doing well. The Big Ten might win a national championship, be the first time this century. So that could be a big day if they don't count Maryland. So I'm encouraged by both teams.
it's pretty crazy with Michigan. They had what, 7 or 8 transfers, right, on their
You're
roster this
right.
season?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's a
nuts.
it's a whole
And
new group. Yeah, and they didn't look great. Like they should have lost to Wake Forest. Wake Forest took them to overtime, and Wake just got blown out by Oklahoma last night in the Players Era Festival or the SEC Players Era and the SEC ACC Challenge. So Wake Forest is not a great team, but they made Michigan look like they were on the same level. But Michigan has amped it up a level, and that goes back to coaching. I think Dusty May was still fact finding with this group, and Adai Mara, who we got on the screen right there. I mean, Adai Mara has been great for this group. So to have someone that's a 7-footer like him next to Lindeborg, who is an NBA prospect, obviously a guy who was a fringe candidate this past season. They got a really good team, a really good group, and Lindeborg will probably be in National Player of the Year conversations at the end of the day. So that's an encouraging sign for Dusty May in Michigan.
I mean, with Mara, it's funny because when he goes to UCLA, I'm still living in LA at the time. I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to watch this lottery pick right off the street in Westwood at UCLA. And it was 2
Yeah,
stinker
you were
seasons
right
for
there.
him, right? And now he is looking really good. He's looking like an NBA level guy. Of course, he's a junior now, but I mean, you're seeing there were the skeptics of Zach Edey when he entered the NBA out of Purdue as one of the best college players ever, and he's been great with Memphis. Now that he doesn't have to worry about 5 fouls, he's defending more. He's still gobbling up every rebound around the rim, in addition to everything he's doing offensively at the basket, improving his jumper as well. He looks like a 10-plus year vet in the NBA. Having a big, large, beefy center is a thing in the NBA now. It's just the reality of it. It's no more PJ Tucker at the 5, except for small spurts in small little stretches of games. Having a true big center is valuable now. And so I think with Adai Mara, I'm not saying he's going to go back up into the lottery at this point after his 3rd year of college, but these guys have value in the NBA. He sure looks like a first rounder to me. He looks like the guy that I hope for his freshman year at UCLA. What is different about him now? Like why is it working for him now in year 3 at Michigan versus year 1 at UCLA and year 2 at UCLA for that matter as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good look for Mick Cronin that he has gone over with Dusty May and looks like a totally different player. But I think that Mick is a little bit old school in the way he was coaching him. I think that Dusty has done a good job of like, hey, we don't need you to have your back to the basket doing post moves. We just need you to be active on the offensive glass. We'll get you easy buckets in the dunker spot, right? I mean, there's a lot of like little minutia that they've been able to figure out with the Daimara. But going back to your point about like we need bigs in basketball, I almost like as much as Steph Curry kind of broke our collective brains in basketball and everyone's trying to find the next Steph Curry, I do think Draymond broke everybody's brain as well because everyone thought that you could just put a guy that is that size at the 5 and it would work out. And I think it's actually disrespectful to someone like Draymond because it's like, no, he's a one of one in the sense that he's able to guard big men the way that he's able to. But we should all, as is tradition in basketball history, we should all be okay to take a guy who's 7'4". Like the Zach Edey discourse to me was insane. I thought that Zach Edey would be a lottery pick. I was happy when he was a lottery pick. Yes, he was the last lottery pick, but I do, kind of find that fascinating where it's like, we went away from like these big guys who can make a difference and get us easy buckets. And then all of a sudden when they start doing it after we've gone away from them, everyone's like, yeah, that would be useful to have those guys. So I think a Daimara is just a really nice piece, especially on the defensive end too. I mean, the rim protection in college basketball, right? You get beat off the dribble if you're Elliot Cadeau or you're Burnett or whoever it is. And right behind you is a guy who's 7 foot tall or Morez Johnson, who's a very active defender, especially around the basket. So he's kind of perfect for this group and this team. And I do think he translates well. I'm not saying he's going to be a lottery pick, but look, 7-footers like that, they don't, we have a bunch of them obviously, but they're not everywhere, especially with the ball skills like we've seen from him. So give him a lot of credit for, sticking with it because, Mick Cronin can break a lesser man. So he got away from there and he's playing some good basketball.
On the Michigan State side, there's no like lottery guy on that team, but I'm intrigued by Jackson Kohler, 14.3 points per game, 9.9 boards, 42.9% from 3. Really good post player. But do you think, Tate, he's too small, to be a big, too slow to be a forward at the next level? I'm just curious to get your thoughts about what he does well for Michigan State, but also what it could mean for his NBA future.
I think that, he's the kind of guy that has a college career, I mean, maybe there is an
The way I
NBA
feel.
future that's in there, and it's okay. We don't all have to be prospects. I think that's something that's gotten lost in the world that we live in now, where everyone's like, well, how does he translate to the next level? It's like, well, I mean, Jackson Cole is a really good basketball player, and he doesn't necessarily have to translate his game to a totally. I mean, we always forget, like, college NBA is totally different sports. Like, yes, they play the same game, but it's a totally different sport. So I don't necessarily see him as like an NBA prospect. Like, I don't think Jackson Kohler is going to be on many people's big boards, but he's going to make a big impact in college basketball, especially on this team, especially rebounding the basketball. And he just seems to make timely shots in big time moments. So, I mean, that's the real takeaway for me. I think Fears is the guy. Their point guard, Jeremy Fears, is the guy that I would be looking at. I mean, again, small guards are always a kind of a tough thing to, again, figure out the translation to the next level. But I think he's done a really good job setting the table for that team. And I do think he has a lot of the traditional point guard kind of, mentality and ability that you really, teams not like to have, because they're like, this guy knows how to get everybody involved. He knows how to do, time, possession, what we expect, how to get in the offense, all that sort of stuff. So I'm not sure that Michigan State, like you said, has really any NBA prospect per se, but I think Fears to me is the most intriguing.
A team that does definitely have NBA prospects is your North Carolina Tar Heels. Caleb Wilson, potential top 4, top 5 pick in the NBA draft. For another lottery lesson here, Tate, I am curious. Caleb Wilson so far this season, there's been some ups, there's been some downs. What are you liking? What are you disliking? What are some of your concerns for him moving forward this season? What do you need to see him get better at?
I've seen a whole lot of good. I mean, I don't really. I mean, the first step is elite. The athleticism is superb. The motor is unparalleled in college basketball. I think that's really the takeaway from Caleb Wilson. If you watch him play, you're just so impressed by the fact that this kid is diving on the floor. He's trying to dunk anything within the realm of the rim. He's a special talent, and he seems to be a special person by all account. He took a lot of the stuff that happened at the McDonald's game pretty personally. I talked to him a little bit there with sort of, the conversation around the players that were there. He took it a little bit as a snub with the way that he was treated and the way that he was handled a bit. And I think he hurt himself by going to play with Cam Boozer at the AAU level, because then everybody sees those guys on the same team and they say, well, Cam Boozer's the franchise guy and Caleb's the other guy. Caleb's got a team again that's his team, and it's kind of made in his image, and we see what that is. And he's been a vocal leader on this team. He's not running away from the smoke. He is, he said that they were going to take belt to ass to everybody. And, a lot of times you say that and it's just saying it, but he was backing it up so far this season. I think the Kentucky game in Lexington was a big stage, a big moment. The physicality of Kentucky got to him. They did a good job kind of bracketing him, double teaming him, throwing different looks at him. He did not shoot the ball relatively well in that game, even though the jumper has been really superb early on in the season, especially against Kansas. I think the Kansas tape is something that if you want to see kind of the fully, formed version of Caleb Wilson, what he can do, I would just pop that tape in, because he looks like a superstar. And, when Kentucky's physicality got to him, I think that was the first sign of, like, he's going to have to put on some weight. He's going to have to get a little bit stronger, especially with the basketball. He struggled a little bit around the rim against Kentucky. And I think that would be, to point to some of the things that you would be concerned about. But I'm not really concerned about it, because I think he's going to get bigger. I think he's going to get stronger. And I think he's going to elevate as he has kind of been prone to do throughout this stretch of the season. So they call him 8 Ball. I don't know if there's a better nickname for him, but he's a clutch guy. So he's got, the whole Rich Paul, LeBron James camp behind him. I'm shocked they haven't done more promo for him. It does feel like he's having to hype himself up a little bit. But if you watch Caleb Wilson, like, the tape doesn't lie.
I'm trying to get him on.
To get
him on. I know Jeff Goodman had him on his show, and he's like, I'm going to be the number 1 pick.
He wants to be the number 1 pick.
He wants to be.
Yeah, I don't think look, I'll say this. I don't think Caleb is in the number 1 pick conversation per se, but again, the number 1 pick is very political. And to me, I think there's a 2-man race for the number 1 pick. I think it's Darryn Peterson. I think it's AJ DeBansa, whichever one you want to use. So I think it's those 2 guys, and maybe Cameron Boozer's in that conversation if you want to open up the gates a little bit. But I think it's really those 2 guys. And I think Caleb Wilson is, like, if he goes number 4, number 5, like if he's Chris Bosh and goes number 4, right? It's a really good spot, and I think you're gonna
Oh,
get a
for
really
sure.
talented player. So I think if anything, just based on how he mentally works, you don't want him to go number one because it seems like he's better with a chip on his shoulder. So if you get Caleb Wilson 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 range, I think you're a happy camper because he's going to use that as motivation, and I think he's going to be a star. I really do. So I've been thoroughly impressed, as you can tell.
I mean, I've been thoroughly impressed with him as well. I think, anytime you have a young player, it's totally fair to pick nits, right? I mean, I had Sam Vecini on a couple of
Hmm.
weeks ago, and we're talking about Cameron Boozer's at-rim finishing struggles earlier in the year for Duke. He's been pretty good since then. He's using the glass more often. It feels like he's just finding better angles at the basket. He's showing some improvement in Duke's game since then. Caleb Wilson so far this season, you mentioned, the effort with him on the defensive end of the floor. He is full throttle, intense, wants to win, plays hard, plays with energy. You can point to like his lack of awareness against Michigan State with his off-ball defense. It's something to note. Like if I'm an NBA coach, like that's something you want to be in the film room with him. But I think anytime you have a player who plays with his effort and intensity, I'm not overly concerned from my standpoint. Like when it comes to analyzing these players, saying he was so bad off ball defensively against Michigan State in the second half of that game. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, he's a teenager. As long as he has the mind, I think those players tend to get better at those things. And offensively, you mentioned some of the at rim finishing. The numbers aren't good. He's 3 for 17 on layups in the half court, only 5 for 12 on layups in transition. So that's 8 for 29 total. His jumper, he had the great game against Kansas, as you said, but he's 4 for 15 on jumpers for the entire season so far, 75% from the line. So it's fair to question what's his actual touch, especially with the layups, but how much of that is, not touch? How much of that, Tate, is actually more like, oh, it's just a lack of strength. It's about shot selection and the little things he needs to learn adjusting to a more physical level of play in college basketball. So it's a long year ahead. I'm not overly concerned about either of those things with Caleb Wilson. Overall, I am beyond impressed with him. I think there's a chance he could push for the top three. I would not rule that out at all when it comes to June, after pre-draft interviews and improvement by that point and all that. Like there's a long way to go. I think for now,
He
having
also
him number
leads.
4.
Yeah, I think number 4 is perfect. I think he leads the country in dunks also. So like a lot of
Yes,
that at rim finishing
yes,
can be fixed simply by him dunking the basketball. And I think
and he's
I
dunking
know
a lot.
Marcus Page.
He
He's
doesn't
dunking a
miss
lot.
dunks.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem with the layup stat there is that like the best thing that he does is dunk the basketball. And I think like his offensive rebounding on his own misses too is like part of the problem. Like he had a moment in the Kentucky game where he threw the ball off the glass to himself, got the rebound, and it should have been an and one, but he made an incredible finish. But like that hurts the layup stats because the first one was him basically just
Yes,
trying to get out of a situation where he's in a double team. So the context matters a little bit with him. But I'm with you. I think if I were to do the draft, and I'm not a draft guy, and I know that you're the expert here, but like to me, it's a Darryn Peterson, AJ DeBanza, Cam Boozer, then Caleb Wilson. And then I think at 5, it's like Nate Mint or Koa Peat, and that's
could be
really
a
my
ton of
top
guys.
5. Yeah,
Yes, I
right.
I
Or
think that's
Mikel
totally
Brown. I mean,
fair.
I don't know. You tell
Yeah.
me. I'm just saying like those are the guys to me that kind of look the part so far.
Yeah, I think that's roughly the list at this point. And that 5th spot, I mean, we'll see. It's a real long way to go at this point, but I do think those are the names right now. With North Carolina, one of the guys that I really liked last year at Arizona was Henry Visar. He had 13 points on 6 of 9 against Michigan State, then 17 points on 8 of 12 with 10 boards against Kentucky. What have you liked from Visar so far with North Carolina?
I like when he catches the ball in the short roll and he's right in front of the free throw line and he decides just to dunk the basketball. I mean, this guy, he had a huge play last night where he kind of dummied a dribble handoff and then just turns back the other way and gets an easy dunk that helped Carolina get tied late in that game against Kentucky. If anything, he should be having more touches for North Carolina. And there was a lot of times in that game where North Carolina was struggling to find offense and it felt like they weren't able to give, Visar the ball. And, that's been an issue with the point guard play. I think North Carolina is going to end up pivoting to Dixon at point guard. And I think Dixon's going to be better with some of those entry passes. The high-low passing between Caleb Wilson and Vasar early on in the season has been electric. I mean, they just kind of play well off each other. They've been really good at being able to make themselves available at the free throw line. They've struggled against some of the higher competition, right? Against the Kentuckys, Michigan States of the world. They did great against Kansas. But I think that when they can get a point guard that's more dedicated to getting him the basketball in the right places, he's really going to take a next level. And I've already seen people talking about kind of what he translates to. And I think it goes back to the Daimara conversation we were having. It's like it's valuable to have someone that's 7'1", 7'2", that can have that type of touch and can be an offensive weapon, but also defensively be someone that can, really give you rim protection. And he had never had a 10 rebound game at Arizona. And he has had, I think, already 4 games with 10 plus rebounds at North Carolina. And we're obviously early in the season. So that's also the encouraging side. I was worried about his rebounding more than anything, but he is really up the ante on the boards. And I think that's something that you can be really encouraged by with Vasar.
Do you think your Tar Heels have a chance at the national title? Do you see that upside for them this year?
I think that they're like a second weekend team, and I think Seth Trimble, who is their best perimeter defender, is out right now. Had a weird injury in the weight room where he had weights fall on his wrist, and he's going to be out until kind of mid-December, maybe late December. So I think if Trimble comes back and fit in, I think they're going to make the change at point guard. I think Kyan Evans, who they have playing point guard right now, is a lot better as a catch and shoot option. They got Luka Bogovac, who's a nice catch and shoot option as well. So I think if they have Dixon, Evans, Trimble, Bogovac, that backcourt looks a little sturdier than it does right now. Their front court is really good. Jaren Stevenson, Caleb Wilson, Henry Vasar. Those 3 guys I really have a lot of faith in. So, look, the tournament's a crapshoot always, but I think that they're in the mix. I think they're going to be in the mix to win the ACC. And, just give them a chance. Hubert Davis, he needs one more run at it. So maybe this is the year, KOC. We need it.
You mentioned potential number 1 picks. Darryn Peterson still out. He's been out since November 7th with his hamstring issue. Bill Self said this week that he's at 90, 99, 95%, but he's not going to play until he's 100%. And Bill Self's full quote was, "I said all along, we're not going to play him until he is. It was as much my decision as anything, but I also sensed he wasn't quite there yet." Tate, are we ever going to see Darryn Peterson suit up with the Jayhawks again?
I saw him in person in the Dean Dome. I was at the Carolina-Kansas game, and it's a lot of people in that space that have watched a lot of good basketball players. Larry Brown, Mark Turgeon, former Maryland coach, is there. Roy Williams is there. The litany of players, both from Kansas, Mario Chalmers, right? All the Carolina players that were there, and pretty much the takeaway from most everyone that I kind of talked to in short form conversations was basically like, man, number 22. He's the real deal, because he didn't even have a great game, KOC, but he was obviously the best player on Kansas. And I would argue Caleb Wilson was the best player on the court that night. But talent-wise, you could see what Darryn Peterson could be, which is like he can impact the game even when he's off. And I think that's very special as a guard. You don't really have guards that can do that type of stuff. That's to me, that's like Derrick Rose, John Wall. There's like a rare air of guards that can really impact while not being able to score the basketball. And he did end up scoring it all right, but didn't have his best game. But yeah, he's a very special talent. I think he's a very special person by all accounts. I heard some of the Kobe comps. I'm not really sure I'm with that, but I got to meet him, got to talk to him a little bit. He seems like a cool customer, and Bill Self is just protecting him because he knows that he's going to be a superstar. So to me, after seeing him in person, I've seen AJ in person as well. I came away, kind of thinking to myself, he's going to be the number 1 pick. So it depends on what the team in the top spot needs. We all love wings, but I think he's really special, and I think he does come back, and I think he has a big impact on this Kansas team.
Yeah, I agree with every word you said about what he's capable of doing for sure. We saw him this year. We've seen him score. We've seen him play off ball defensively. We've seen him be a lockdown defensive guy, even back at the high school level. He checks every single box, and he's fluid with his motion and movement. I think right now I lean towards him at number 1. But I'm not locking anything in. I don't want to anchor myself to anything yet.
Got a lot of
Devontae,
games. Yeah.
that's a lot of games to go, and hopefully a lot of games for Darryn Peterson as well for Kansas moving
100%.
forward as well this season. Florida lost again this week. They're 5-3 to start the year as the defending champions. Tate losing to Duke in Cameron Indoor on Tuesday night. What's your take on Florida? What's going on with them? They seem to be a little bit underwhelming in some ways.
Yeah, they I think that they won the headlines of the transfer portal, which is, hey, we got former 5-star number 1 point guard Boogie Fland, and we get Xavier Lee from Princeton. He's going to be plug and play for us. The backcourt is just not there. And, I just think what they had to replace in that backcourt, obviously Walter Clayton, the most outstanding player, that's an obvious one, but really Elijah Martin, who I feel like is a little bit unheralded when we talk about this team, and Will Richard as well, who's obviously showing a lot of signs with the Golden State Warriors, already becoming a player for that team, and he's a really good player in general. So those three guys leaving, yes, the front court is still intact. Yes, the front court is still elite, but I just think they don't have the guard play. And it's not even the scoring, because I think I've seen a lot of people be like, well, Boogie Fland's been great. Did you not watch him in Cameron? He was so good late in that game scoring the basketball. And I think Boogie Fland is super talented in that capacity. And I do think that Boogie Fland is kind of filling the Walter Clayton role. But I think what they're missing is the Elijah Martin role. And they just don't have that perimeter defender that can really hound other teams' guards. And I think that's really what's missing from this team. And until they get Klavchar or one of these other guys to really step up and be able to do that, then they're just going to really struggle against some of the guards in the SEC and beyond. But Thomas Houck has been great. He's their best player. I like Chinyelu. I like Alex Condon. But Xavier Lee is kind of like a Boogie Fland. They're just kind of the same guy. They're just two scoring guards, and they really need defense, especially on the ball. There's just no ball pressure there. And I think if Todd Golden was sitting here with us and was talking with us, he would say the same thing. So they're still going to be a good team, and they're still going to be a team to be reckoned with, but they got to figure out that backcourt ASAP.
What about St. John's? I mean, they're the number 2 seed last March.
The same problem. Yeah.
Same issues with them.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there. I'm just like, they kind of did the same thing as Florida, where RJ Lewis was such a special defender for them last year, and or RJ Louise, as Rick Pitino called him after he didn't play so well in the tournament. He changed his whole name, which is crazy.
Still
we'll never get over that. I think he hurt his whole NBA career.
What a legend Pitino is.
Just the most Rick Pitino thing ever. But Ian Jackson is a Boogie Fland type guy, right? I mean, he's a scoring guard. I think that he has a lot of untapped potential. I think you really have to get him to buy in defensively. And if he does, maybe that changes the course of the season for them. I really like Dylan Mitchell. I think he's a really good defender. I think he could be arguably the Big East defender of the year, but you can't be that player if you give up 85 points a game. Like, they're not going to give defensive player of the year to a team that gives up 85 points a game. And I think a lot of people worried about the offense of this team, but really it's the defense and the defensive identity. I mean, Dylan Darling's doing his best out there, but the backcourt is just not there for St. John's right now, especially defensively. So, they kind of mirror Florida a little bit, where they get Zuby Ejiofor, they get Condon back. You know what I mean? It's like both those teams got their bigs back of note, but they just haven't been able to figure out defensively what to do with the ball pressure. And the press doesn't work if you don't press, And I know that sounds stupid, but like, you have to put pressure on the ball for the press to work. If not, people are just going to carve up the press. And that's kind of what's happened to them, And it's just anti-Rick Pitino. It doesn't fit Pitino's mold or mentality at all. So they have a lot to figure out too.
I'm trying to pull up right now their numbers defensively with the press so far this season. But I do, like you said, it's definitely not what it was last year for them.
It doesn't pass the eye test. I mean, maybe the numbers say, hey, they're not that bad on the press or whatever, but I'm just in just watching them, it feels like on defense they're like, hey, Dylan Mitchell, save us, and he can do a lot of switching on the perimeter. He's obviously a really naturally gifted defender, but they don't have a true point guard. And I know Rick Pitino said point guards don't exist anymore, but in college basketball they kind of do. and they're kind of necessary because we just watched Walter Clayton, his former point guard, go win Most Outstanding Player. So there's a little bit of irony to the whole conversation.
Boy, Dylan Mitchell, another guy. There's a lot to like when he entered Texas. What now? 4 years ago, or 3 years ago at this point, when he was a freshman entering Texas, and he gets a little pit stop at Cincinnati, and now he's at St. John's, and still can't shoot at all. Hasn't figured it out, unfortunately.
He's got a push shot. You were talking about push shots earlier. Yeah, he's got I don't know what it is. They're not going to fix it. I know they fixed R.J. Lewis's shot at St. John's for the most part, but I mean, they don't even want Mitchell to shoot. That's the problem. They're like, all right, well, all these other guys are going to shoot. You just play defense, and I don't know if that's a good deal for him.
I mean, he's like kind of college Ben Simmons in a way.
Honestly,
I mean, he sort of is.
Both
I mean, speaking about
lefties,
exactly. Pronunciations, R.J. Lewis, R.J. Louis. We were talking before the podcast about A.J. DiBanza or DiBanza. I want to play you an audio clip recorded from WCVB Boston. Asking AJ and Ace how to pronounce the last name.
For once and for all, tell us how to say your last name.
DiBanza. Just forget the T's there. Silent. DiBanza.
What's crazy to me about this? So I'll tell my version of the story. So I'm at the McDonald's All-American game. We're doing the interviews with the guys. AJ, most everybody's partnered up with somebody, right? So it's like, Koa Peat and Mikael Brown Jr. together, right? So you get like partnered up. But AJ came in separately, and probably for the reasons that you would suspect. He's a superstar, but he comes in with his dad, and we do our little interview. And I'm asking him like top 5 things and whatever else I was at, all types of like quick hitter questions, and we get done. And so I had asked, the McDonald's guy before, I was like, what is it? AJ DiBanza or is it AJ DiBanza? And he was like, it's DiBanza, right? So I don't even say his name, during our little thing. So then I go up to his dad afterwards, and I'm like, I might as well get it straight from the source. So I go to AJ's dad, who is, if you don't know, AJ's dad he runs the AJ DiBanza, empire. And I was like, what do we do here? Is it DiBanza? Is it DiBanza? And I said, I think it's DiBanza. And, or that's what I assumed it was. And he was like, yes, it's DiBanza, like an ant, like DiBanza. And it's crazy because I think he told Jay Billis also, because Jay Billis says DiBanza as well. And I have been saying DiBanza, and either he's getting one over on us and he's just having a lot of fun laughing at us, which I honestly think is hilarious if that's the case, or AJ doesn't know how to pronounce his own last name. So I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I texted Ace DiBanza during our recording. I said, can you send me an audio file of you pronouncing your last name, looking for the proper way to say it? And he sent me that link to that video that I just played, and with the message DEE ... BAN ... SA. T is silence, which isn't very helpful because it could be ban or bon.
Yeah, the ban. The ban is ban. It's not
ban
bon.
or bon. Yeah,
it's ban. It's not bon.
But
I'm just telling you.
But in the video, he says DiBanza. AJ says DiBanza. So I need to get Ace needs to send me an audio file, a voice recording. I'm gonna ask for that from him specifically.
The best part about this is like I would honestly be so scared if it was just me that was a part of this. I'd be like, this is my old memory all screwed up. But like Kyle Crichton, shout out to producer Kyle. Kyle was there for this whole thing, and he was like, he liked that you knew how to pronounce the name right. Like he was like he really appreciated that that I said DiBanza. And now I'm all thrown for a loop, but at least I have a witness. So like we will get Kyle in at some point to litigate this whole process, because I've been saying DiBanza on every show, and everyone has tried to correct. Like you know how everybody's a know-it-all, Kevin. You know this. So everyone's like, Tate, it's DiBanza, and I'm like, I don't care what you tell me. He told me
it's
DiBanza.
Like the Luka Doncic people, right?
Yes, right.
It's not Doncic. You guys are all idiots. It's like, Doncic.
I said Doncic when he first came out, and everyone's like, "You're an idiot." I also said Marvin Bagley. I would take him, but things happen.
We
Kevin,
all we all have our misses. That's for sure.
See,
Tate,
well, that's why you don't be honest. You know what I mean? Like I was like, or you do be honest. Sorry, I was trying to cave for Duke at the time because I was like, you know what? Everyone thinks I'm a Duke hater. I need to be nice to Marvin Bagley. He is a really good player. I'll say Marvin Bagley should go number 2 to the Kings. And the only 2 people that thought that was correct are me and Vlade Divac. So it was a mistake. But that's why you're never nice to the Duke guys. That's why I had to talk about Cameron Boozer. I learned my lesson.
It is what it is. Tate, I hope One Shining Podcast makes a return this year, man.
Me too,
I miss
man.
listening to your show, man. You are crushing it always, though, with everything you're doing at the Ringer. Appreciate you joining me today, man, to talk some college basketball, some NBA drafts. Always good to talk to you, Tate. Thank you, man.
Of course, man. Anytime. And next time you talk to Ace, please give me an update because I need to know so I stop sounding like an idiot.
Will do. See you, Tate.
Thanks, man.